All right, so welcome back, everybody. Thank you. Yeah. So again, you know,
Can you
just
hear them?
if this is your,
I don't know if I'm showing up on the camera. That I don't know.
yeah, you need to
Well,
mute
yeah, you should be
yourself.
able to participate.
Can you mute
If
yourself?
it says stop video, yeah, it should be in there. Scroll over.
Okay, I want to mute you. Okay. So yeah, so welcome back. And this is a Chicago Audubon presentation with Matthew Freer. And he heads up the Natural Areas program at the Park District. We've got a few other people in our audience today that are also from the Natural Areas program. And I see a lot of people that bird the parks and do habitat restoration work in the parks. So this is a great group. Welcome all of you, and we're excited for the program today. So I am going to, let me say that we are recording. And we are going to start streaming this on Facebook Live in a minute. And I'm going to just turn this over to Matt. He's a great friend of birds and birding. We're excited to hear from him today. He's got about 15 minutes, and then we'll open it up to your questions.
Great. Thank you, Judy. Hello, everybody. I'm glad you mentioned that stewardship. There are, in fact, some folks from our team here, but I also see some stewards on the call and some other partners of our program. So it's great to see a lot of friendly faces today. So thank you for showing up. So I'm just going to give a brief overview about our program today. Talk a little bit about some threads of our management, and then highlight a few areas specifically. USX or Park 566 on the south side, some of our wetlands habitats, and some of the monitoring that's been happening there. And then, of course, Montrose, which I know many folks want to hear about or talk about. And then there'll be time for questions at the end. So I'm gonna share my screen here, hoping that let's see. Okay. Again, I'm Matt Freer. I oversee the Chicago Park District's environmental conservation and engagement team. Our team manages about 1,850 acres of natural area and then related programming. What are the Chicago Park District's natural areas? They're habitats that are dedicated to the cultivation and enrichment of ecological diversity, nature exploration, learning, and the enlivening of the human spirit. I'm going to dive into that a little bit here over the course of the next 10 to 15 minutes. As I mentioned, we're just about 1,850 acres. That is actually expanding. We're acquiring new natural areas. In fact, just before everyone hopped on the call, we were talking about the Dunning-Reed Conservation Area. Now the Park District is in process of acquiring that a piece of property for management. We're also looking at some new natural areas across the city, further expanding what's at Garfield Park, looking at a natural area in Uptown. I know Milani's on the call. She's been an integral part in that process. So we're looking at acquiring and creating new natural areas throughout the system. Another mission of ours is, as mentioned in the statement earlier, is connecting people with nature. It's not just about ecology and restoration for ecological diversity, but also the ability for people, Chicagoans, to connect with nature. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Richard Louv and his books, but connecting children and people with nature is just as important now as it has ever been. And I think especially in the last year, with social distancing and social isolation for a lot of people, nature has so many mental health benefits. So we're seeing nature and people engage in the outdoors in numbers that they have not in the past. And I think that speaks volumes for parks and for natural areas. And I think that's not just a phenomenon we're seeing in Chicago, that's something we're seeing nationwide. This is a long statement, don't feel like you need to read through it, but again, just highlighting the importance of natural areas and connecting people, especially in urban spaces. This quote here comes from Chicago Wilderness's Green Infrastructure Vision, and just highlighting again the importance and the need for urban green space and nature in that urban green space. As I mentioned before, there's so much research around the benefits for humans of nature, and especially within urban environments. We're actually pursuing some studies with Northwestern, potentially with Weiss Hospital, and some other entities, the Nature Conservancy, the Department of Public Health, to address some of these issues and try to learn really on a scale of Chicago where the benefits are and how our community members actually benefit directly from these natural areas. Another key component of what we do is working with our institutional and community partners like Chicago Audubon. Another great benefit is not only mental health benefits, but community benefits in terms of ecosystem services like carbon cycling, nitrogen sinks, pollution mitigation, mitigating heat island effects, flood mitigation, and then, aesthetics. A lot of people enjoy walking in our natural areas in May, June, July when their wildflowers are in bloom. Some people enjoy as the plants desiccate in fall, and the brown landscape that provides. So these are all benefits of natural areas that people don't always think about, but there are significant community impacts from our natural areas in these with these benefits. So I love this quote. This is actually from the Green Infrastructure Vision, again, of Chicago Wilderness, and just highlighting the sort of oxymoron of the fact that urban green space, urban natural areas are rely on people for advocacy. So people need these spaces, and these spaces need people. And so you all are advocates of these urban natural areas. And so this is just my call to you all to continue that work. And also a thank you for your advocacy, because these places wouldn't exist without you. And I mean that quite literally, because a lot of you are very involved in advocacy work, stewardship work, and promoting our spaces, whether it's directly or indirectly. Another very important part of our work is making sure that we have cultural relevance. And so what one community sees as what they want out of their natural area is different than what another community might want out of their natural area. So we work very hard to try to have cultural relevance within the communities that we exist. This picture is from a wonderful project that we did in the Burnham Wildlife Corridor. I'm sure many have visited. Noreen Rana, who's on the call today from our team, put in a lot of work to have these wonderful art pieces within the Burnham Wildlife Corridor space. They serve as community gathering spaces for the communities that are adjacent to the Burnham Wildlife Corridor. And I chose this photo because obviously it's a bird, but the idea of migration came out in, I think, 4 out of the 5 gathering spaces that exist. So I don't think that that's a coincidence. And the image of a bird here, the image of a butterfly in another one. So migration has a lot of cultural relevance to folks beyond just the birding community. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but partnerships add so much value to what we do at the Park District, especially within our natural areas team. This is just a small list of the folks that we work with. You know, and I want to highlight just the scale of these groups. International organizations like the Nature Conservancy, community organizations like Chicago Commons, and then, you know, obviously federal institutions, museums, community-based organizations like Sacred Keepers. So, you know, we cannot do our work alone. And so many of our partners help us do a better job, and we try to provide resources to our partners in the process. So this being a birding group, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the birding organizations that we work with, and just talk a little bit about how we work with those different organizations. So Audubon Great Lakes, they developed the Calumet Conservation Action Plan. So I'll talk a little bit more about our wetland habitats here momentarily. They do marsh bird monitoring. So those that aren't familiar with our wetlands sites on the southeast side, we have Hegwish Marsh, Indian Ridge Marsh, Big Marsh, and Marion Burns Prairie. We also have, we will hopefully be acquiring, in fact, it goes to our board tomorrow night, to acquire a new wetland habitat on the southeast side, Dead Stick Pond, which is, they all exist in a relative close proximity to each other, and are some of the only wetlands that exist within Chicago. So we're very proud of those properties, and I'll show you momentarily the progress that we've made on those sites. Audubon Great Lakes is a great funding partner of ours. They've brought some resources to bear in terms of the restoration work we've done. The work of the Calumet Conservation Action Plan, they've done a lot of planning, and then, you know, obviously advocacy and the monitoring that I've mentioned. So this is the secret of marsh bird data that Audubon Great Lakes has done. This is 2020's data. And so, you know, as you look at this, I'm just going to read some of the 2015 data as an example of where we have come for our marsh bird habitat. In 2015, there were a total of 6 species identified across these 3 sites. We had 1 marsh wren spotted at Indian Ridge Marsh. We had 3 pied-billed grebes at Hegwish Marsh, and we had 2 sora identified at Hegwish Marsh. And as you can see the data here, these numbers far exceed that. And I think that speaks volumes to the work that's happened in the Calumet region. Those that visit Big Marsh, anecdotally, we've seen a massive increase in the diversity of birds as well. So we're really proud of this work. We're so grateful for Audubon Great Lakes for the work that they do in monitoring. And so this is one example of a great partnership we have with them. Chicago Ornithological Society, they do guided bird walks on Chicago Park District property. Dan Laurie does a wonderful State of the Birds report, which I'll share a glimpse of shortly at USX. They do bird banding and again, advocacy. They were very involved in the Monty and Rose watch the last 2 years. So this is just a snapshot of Dan's report. For those of you who know Dan, he's an amazing photographer, and so he also documented, I can't remember his total days, over 200 days at USX, and you can see the diversity of species he observed on that site. Park 566, we call it USX, same property. So again, another wonderful resource that Chicago Ornithological Society has brought to the table. And then of course, Chicago Audubon. We love Chicago Audubon. You know, they've been involved in the parks for a long time, leading walks on CPD property. In fact, in the breakout room, they were being highlighted. So I'd love to hear that. Collaboration on projects at McKinley Park and West Pullman Park in developing birding programs, advocacy, writing postcards to elected officials, and just driving birders to many park district sites. And then, you know, sharing data, the data that you all are you know, bird observations that you all are making help us understand if our restoration work is, having a positive effect on bird communities. I was talking earlier with a couple of colleagues, Lauren and Noreen, who are both on this call, and the mission and the management of our natural areas is not simply for plant diversity, and it's not simply for ecological diversity. We have so many park users, but we do have many examples of where we are actually managing for bird habitat. We have our purple martin towers, our bank swallows at Montrose, the piping plovers. Obviously, we're managing those parcels specifically for bird habitat. And then in the Burnham Wildlife Corridor, not necessarily specifically bird habitat, but pollinator and bird habitat. We've intentionally thought about 3 seasons of pollinating plants in the Burnham Wildlife Corridor. So I just want to highlight those examples of places where we're managing for birds or pollinators and birds in our natural areas. So I mentioned the plover habitat and the bank swallow habitat. I know many of you want to talk about Montrose, and I'm sure that there'll be time for questions, but we are going to be implementing some, improvements to Montrose. You can see here, this is an outline of the plan. The full plan can be seen online if you go to the Chicago Park District. If you just Google Chicago Park District, Montrose Master Plan, there is a link on the planning website to the Montrose Master Plan. This is one phase of the project. I do want to highlight the fact that we can afford this work. There's a lot of other things that we would love to do, but this is what we have the money to do right now. Thanks to Noreen, who's also on the call, for writing the grant, and we can implement this work this year. So you can see the asphalt trails that we'll be putting in. I know that there's varied opinions on this, but we're really excited to have an accessible birding area. Many of our natural areas have wood chip or crushed stone pathways, which are not accessible for folks with accessibility concerns. The Mayor's Office of Disability has a higher standard than the federal standard. So the federal standard does allow for mulch or crushed gravel in many instances, but the reality is for many folks that is not actually accessible. So we're excited to have these asphalt trails in and formalize a main entrance to Montrose, which will hopefully cut down on all of the desire paths that spider web throughout the Magic Hedge and the Magic Clump and that area. And so the image on the lower right you can see here is sort of a thematic image of what we expect the entrance to be. I know there's a lot of concerns about bikes and other sort of wheeled things coming through this space, but the way that the entrance is designed forces people to slow down, dismount. We will have bike racks available, and the signage will be very clear that bikes are not allowed in this space. So we're really excited to start this project later on this year. That's all I have. I'm assuming there are many questions, probably many about Montrose. So happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Matt. And right before we get to the Q&A portion, we just have a few announcements. First, we want to just say thank you so much for staying with us this long. And also just wanted to let you all know a few of our actions that we are supporting. Chicago Audubon Society is active in the effort to stop General Iron from opening a facility in the Calumet area, as we are already burdened by so much pollution already. We also support a native plants ordinance in Chicago. And if people sign up for our mailing list, they can learn more about our events, local environmental actions, and articles that we've published about local birds and conservation. And you can do that on our website if you're not already signed up already. And we also want to let you all know about a wonderful plant sale we have coming up. And we will be announcing some more programs very soon. And with that, we want to transition into the Q&A. We have a couple of questions already. If you have not typed in your question in the chat, you can do so. And I will pull them and read them off to Matt. So this question's from Annette. Is this she was asking during the presentation, is there a map of the natural areas or the parks? So Matt, if there's a place you can refer people for more maps.
So all of our natural areas are on the Chicago Park District website. I believe it's /nature, chicagoparkdistrict.com/nature. And you should be able to find a link to all of our natural areas there.
Thank you. And this question is from Amy. Is the Park District actively working with the Forest Preserve District to create, join, and expand and merge natural corridors and connections?
I love that question. So I can't say that we're doing it at the level that I would love to see it. We do coordinate and we're aware of each other's activities. I love that idea. We're not quite at that scale yet. And I did see that there was a little bit of a follow-up about MWRD. So we do lease property from MWRD, and they're a partner of ours in some of our work, like the recent restoration at River Park, and in fact the property that I mentioned, Dead Stick Pond, we are leasing from MWRD, so they are a partner and help us. But we're not actively planning with them.
Very good question. I was wondering that too, actually. The next question are a couple of Montrose questions. Pat, this is from Pat. When will Montrose be open to cars?
Unfortunately, I cannot answer that question. I don't know, Montrose will be open at the same time that the rest of the lakefront opens to vehicles. And I honestly don't have an answer to that question.
And the next question, this one's about accessibility, and it's from Elaine. Will there be handrails for the stairs at Montrose?
That is a good question. I don't think it currently exists within the plan, but I am making note of that, and I will talk it through with our upcoming work and see if we can fit that in.
This question's from Sarah. The pandemic has led to a wonderful increase in local park usage, which is great, but the natural areas have also gotten a lot of love too. Will there be an effort this year to restore the natural areas?
Yes, thank you for that acknowledgement. And yes, there are many sites that we're noticing that we love people using our parks, but some of them are overloved, and we are going to do the best that we can with the resources that we have to refresh those areas that have really been beaten up.
Thank you. And the next question's from Kathleen. This one's about Montrose. Will there be a decision about Montrose Beach concerts going forward?
That is a good question, and one that I can't answer. I don't know the status of the concerts at Montrose or anything like that. And I think a lot of this is, I think, COVID dependent for this year, but moving forward, I don't know.
This question's interesting. This is from Susan. Is the North Pond at Lincoln Park considered a natural area since it was originally man-made? How do I define a natural area?
That's a very good question. So, the natural areas within Chicago are mostly open prairie. We do manage the lagoons as well, wetlands, And we have a tiny bit of oak savanna habitat in the city, but mostly open prairie. So to directly answer your question, is North Pond considered a natural area? There is natural area around the lagoon fringe, and many of the lagoons around the city, in fact, I believe all of them, have natural area around the fringe. That is a huge benefit to the water in the lagoon itself. It protects it. It's a big habitat enhancement for the bird, the fish, and the invertebrates that live there.
Next question is from Eric. How much of 566 in U.S. Steel is planned as natural area versus other uses?
So currently the entirety of 566 is a natural area. We had a grant from the EPA about 5 years ago to do a lot of work there and really manage a lot of the invasive species and work on getting a lot more native species in there. There is a master plan for that site. Again, if you just Google Park 566 master plan, that should take you to the Park District's planning website, which you can then click on a link for the master plan there, which does call for about 80% of the site being a natural area. The rest of it is, a turf panel for people to picnic in, and then a path throughout.
That's fascinating. I'm looking forward to more of those developments for 566. Let's see. Our next question is from our president, Judy. What is the status of the golf course and the South Shore Nature Sanctuary?
I haven't heard anything on the golf course at all, to be honest. I know that I haven't heard it brought up in years, to be honest, Judy. I know that the Obama Center just passed federal review, but that doesn't have a negative impact on Wooded Island or Bobolink Meadow, which is great. So I can't speak to the golf course project.
And this question's from Elaine. What is being constructed north of the tennis courts at Diversey?
Great question. It is about a 3 acre. So there's 2 parts of sort of 3 parts of the project. There's a new AstroTurf sports field going into the east of the driving range, and then to the north of that is going to be a 3 acre natural area, and they're going to make improvements to the picnic grove there. So three different things: improvements to the existing about a 3 acre natural area, and then a AstroTurf field for sports.
And this question's from Elizabeth. What's the status of expansion of natural area at Montrose to include beach use by the Pulverst?
So we've received a lot of communication, and I know Chicago Audubon is in support of the expansion that's been proposed. So I think, our administrators are taking that all into consideration. I don't think that a decision has been made on that, but know that we are committed to managing the plovers and managing the plover habitats for their return. In fact, just yesterday, I was working on scheduling our first walkthrough with our state and federal partners to make sure that that habitat is ready for the plovers if and when they arrive, both in terms of the grading itself and the fencing. And so we are taking steps to make sure that the plovers are protected when they arrive.
The next question is from Antonio. I think the natural area at West Pullman Park just turned 100, and there's some new beautiful signage. What are some of the oldest natural areas in Chicago?
That is a great question, and I think you're right. What I've heard is that some of the oak trees in that natural area are in fact older than Chicago has been technically incorporated. So that is one of my favorite natural areas. I was there about 3 weeks ago. as far as the oldest natural areas in Chicago, I'm going to have to go do research because I don't have a good answer for you, Antonio. I'm going to have to go and find that out myself. As far as the oldest that have been actively managed, I can tell you that Montrose and Jarvis are two of the older parcels. Hegwish Marsh is also pretty old as well. So, but I can't speak to all of them throughout the system.
Very good question.
I think, Matt, that North Park Village Nature Center is, it's almost 50. And I think it was kind of designated the first nature center.
Right. Yeah.
As
You're
far as
right. It was the first nature center, but it's gone through so many, right? At one time it was a sod farm, and then it was obviously the sanitarium.
oh yeah, it's definitely, it's a man-made native area.
Right.
There's been, the pond wasn't there, but we do have some oak trees that are 100 in our, there are a couple. Bob knows them by name.
Well, thank you for that, Kathleen, and thank you, Matt. I'm gonna have to do some research too, because there's some pretty old parts of Chicago that I think could use a little more attention and love. And we have time for a couple more questions if anyone has them. Just continue to put them in the chat, please. And this question's from Stephen. Are there plans to expand the natural areas in Lincoln Park? There's so much lawn on the lakefront.
I love that question. If it were up to me, yes. But there are many users of that space. And so this is where you as an advocacy organization, as an individual, come in and speak to what you want to see and why. I would love to see it, but that's me personally, and I'm sure a lot of you. But there are other people who enjoy those turf panels as well for picnicking and soccer and frisbee and whatever else it might be. So it's a fair question, and I'm going to turn it around and put it on you all to advocate for things like that.
Thank you so much, Matt. And thank you everyone for your question and answers. And I'm going to hand it over to Judy, who's going to report back some of the things we learned from you all earlier in the program.
Yeah, I had said that Matt was very interested in hearing what was discussed at the group. So I think I just wanted to give a little space here for people to unmute themselves and talk about parks that they think are really great for birds, parks that they use for birding, and maybe what's so appealing about those parks. So feel free to just unmute yourself and answer that question.
I just want to jump in with one of my first experiences was Chicago's oldest surviving park, which is Washington Square Park. And there's a surprising amount of birds, even in that very urban location. I once had a headless northern flicker dropped on my shoulder by a hawk from a tree in that park. So every space matters, I think.
I know that you go down on the south side and there's the area that's the bend in the Calumet River that, especially in the winter, is wonderful for viewing ducks. But if you go over there, your chances of getting your hand slapped by the cops because it's Metropolitan Water District is pretty good. Wondering if there's a way to have a public entrance or a viewing stand of some sort at that area.
I guess I'm not familiar with the site. If it's MWRD and they're protecting the site, there's probably a reason, but that's a question for MWRD. I know that some of their commissioners are they're big proponents of natural areas and birding and things like that, but I can't speak to that site specifically.
Okay.
It's interesting you brought that up because a few of us are involved in in developing a kind of a paper about habitat along the Chicago River, and that was one of the sites that we were talking about, how the access there is so difficult, and it's so great for birding. So it's good to hear you say that. I'll definitely bring that back to the group.
I
would
just
say that
enjoy-
I've been, oh, sorry, go ahead, Susan.
Oh, I was just saying, I just enjoy watching the ducks and cormorants over at the Montrose Harbor. It's on Halloween. I watched a cormorant swallow a fish about as big as my shoe.
I have to just say something funny because my uncle, who, if he was with us right now, would be about 100. And he worked for the Chicago Park District for about 30 years. Humboldt and Reese were his parks that he did the maintenance for. And he was on that maintenance. They called them maintenance guys then. Now we call them land managers. But the difference in the stories that he would talk about and what's happening with the park districts now is so different, because there wasn't the idea of natural areas. The idea was, developing the parks for recreation purposes only. And so it's kind of nice to see it come full circle. Even though I did enjoy my youth skating at Brooks Park every year, way up on the northwest side. We had a really nice ice rink every year, and we learned to skate there and skated, and we don't do that anymore. My aunt also told me that at Humboldt Park, they used to do the Silver Skates race every year. Had anyone heard of that? The Silver Skates ice race on the lagoon in Humboldt? And she says she won, but we think that's a family myth. But those were the uses then. And I'm just so glad we have the park system that we do. And now that we can change over some of it, we still need a lot of recreation, but I still like to see it moving to natural spaces.
Yeah, I just started birding in October, and live somewhat near Montrose, and really have enjoyed getting to know kind of the birding process, and having that accessible space right near me, and just with abundant species, being able to draw me further into the birding world, and get addicted to that. So I think I haven't gone too far outside of Montrose, but I go there probably once a week, if not, twice on the weekends, and just it's a great place to spend time, and enjoy, the urban landscape, to be able to overlook Chicago, the city, as well as just enjoy everything around me, even if I only see some house sparrows. But it's great to see all the reports on eBird coming through, for all the different species that are there. And it's awesome to kind of get involved and have that space to be able to draw me in. So thanks for stewarding that.
I was going to say, I like to stop by the river at the Diversey River Bowl on the north side, and the east side of it by the old, I've forgotten the name of the housing project there that's now being renovated. Anyway, it's really nice. We've taken our grandkids there too, because you can get up close to the ducks, right? You're not too far from the ducks. And since the ducks aren't moving a lot, it's good for people who are newer at bird watching, or it makes the identification process in the winter a lot easier. Plus you can be in the car and not have to get out in the cold.
Anyone else want to talk about a park that they bird at a lot? This was great. Thank you all for the feedback.
I do. I want to give a shout out to some of our South Side parks. Shout out to Big Marsh. I really love the improvements that they've done over there. I remember when it was all Phragmites and they were over your head when you walked through. And now it's a really cool bike park, and it's a great place to go birding. And I also want to give a shout out to IRM. It's a really cool place, smaller park, but still a lot of great birds to look at. And also my favorite park is Calumet Beach Park. I love being able to just drive through, and I enjoy birding from my car as well. So it's a great place to go look at the ducks and other waterfowl at the beach. And with that, I want to say thank you so much to everyone for joining us for our first program of the year. And we want to say thank you so much to Matt for giving his expertise and time. And this program will be online and it'll be on YouTube later on. And I hope you all have a wonderful night and stay warm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.